license and registration. The flashlight didn't just shine into the car. It sliced through the night like it was searching for something more than paperwork. Terrell kept both hands on the wheel, his breathing steady but inside, a war zone of memory and control. He hadn't run a light, hadn't swerved, hadn't even touched his phone. And yet, here he was, pulled over on a quiet stretch of West Fairmont Avenue. Sirens fading into a cold silence. The officer outside, young, rigid, eager, the kind who didn't see a man coming home to his wife, only a silhouette in the dark. The second one, already gripping his holster like the handle knew him by name. Something was off. Miles knew it. And in less than 5 minutes, two patrolmen would make the kind of mistake that didn't just end careers, it rewrote the future of an entire city. Thank you for being here. Sometimes, the smallest moments carry the greatest meaning. Today's story is one of those. Quiet, powerful, and worth remembering. If it touches your heart, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like more stories like this, you're warmly invited to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the next one. Now, let's take a closer look at what really happened. There was a rhythm to the suburbs of Fairview Heights. A kind of quiet that blanketed everything after 8 p.m. Garage doors sealed like vaults. Porch lights clicked on in unison. And inside each home, someone was microwaving leftovers, folding laundry, or waiting for someone to come home. Terrell was one of those someones. Except he wasn't home yet. He had just left a meeting with city council members, his jacket still holding the faint scent of fresh paint and old paper. The budget review had gone long, the discussions longer, but progress had been made. Fairview was on the cusp of reform, real, measurable change. And Miles, he was the one leading it. He wasn't flashy. Didn't like press conferences or podiums. He believed change didn't start with speeches. It started with people. With presence. He had spent most of the day in rec centers and public libraries, not because he had to, but because he wanted to listen before he led. It had been 3 weeks since he'd taken the role. Chief of police, appointed quietly, publicly confirmed but not yet recognizable. Not by face, and certainly not by badge. That anonymity would matter tonight. The drive home was familiar. Sycamore Avenue curved like a tired smile across the west side of town. Street lamps buzzed gently overhead, casting soft amber glows onto damp asphalt. The occasional flicker of a motion light hinted at life behind shutters. Miles was 3 blocks from his turn. His hands relaxed on the steering wheel. His thoughts, already halfway home. He could almost smell Angela's pot roast from here. They'd been married 21 years. And somehow, even after all that time, she still made him nervous in the best kind of way. He smiled. Then red and blue. Out of nowhere, like a slap in the face. The cruiser behind him didn't tailgate, just hovered. Lights flashing, no siren. Then, the sudden chirp. A quick command. Pull over. Miles blinked. Instinct kicked in fast. He checked the speedometer. 29 in a 35. Signal working. No lights out. No rolling stop. He pulled over anyway. Not because he had to, but because experience told him it was safer to. He'd been here before. Not this exact street, but this moment, where the rules changed depending on what they thought they saw. His pulse slowed, not from calm, but from trained discipline. Hands visible. No sudden moves. Narrate everything. He unbuckled his seatbelt, rolled down the window, and waited. The officer approached fast. Too fast. You in a hurry tonight? Sharp. Suspicious. Not curious. Not professional. Just edge. Miles turned slowly, meeting the young man's gaze. No, sir. Just heading home. The flashlight beam darted across his face, then down to the console, his lap, the glove box. It wasn't a check, it was a search. License and registration. The words weren't a request, they were a warning. Yes, officer. Reaching now, my registration is in the glove box. License in my wallet. Reaching slow. No response. Just that silent stiffness of someone looking for a reason. Miles moved carefully, his every motion deliberate. He had trained officers like this. He had fired officers like this. He knew the signs. He also knew the danger of pride in a uniform with a gun. The second officer lingered by the trunk, one hand resting on the butt of his sidearm. Standard formation. But the tension wasn't standard. It was radiating. And then the first officer spoke again. Do you know why I pulled you over? Miles didn't answer immediately. It didn't matter what he said. You were swerving. The officer continued, cutting him off. Back there near Juniper. Crossed the center line twice. That's not correct, sir. Miles said, evenly. My dash cam will verify I stayed in lane. That was the moment it turned. Dash cam. Huh. That'll be confiscated. Step out of the vehicle. Miles froze. Officer, I'm complying. I haven't done anything. Step out of the vehicle. Now. The second officer stepped in. He didn't wait for Miles to even open the door. He reached in, grabbed his arm, and yanked him toward the curb. It wasn't just rough. It was disrespect with handcuffs. The metal bit into Miles' wrists as if they were punishing him for being calm. He didn't resist, didn't argue. But inside, he burned, not with rage, with resolve. Neighbors watched from behind blinds. Nobody came outside, but they saw, and that was enough. Enough for the truth to eventually find its way out. Inside the squad car, Miles sat stiffly, hands cuffed, neck straight. He wasn't broken, he was recording everything. Every word, every tone, every moment. The officers in the front laughed, cracked jokes. So what's your story, huh? Late night run. Or just being difficult? Miles didn't respond. Man, like you always got a story. One of them sneered. Let's see what shakes out when we get downtown. The cruiser moved again, back toward the precinct, unaware that the man in the back seat wasn't just another name. He was the name they answered to. And very soon, they'd find out what that meant. The precinct was still half asleep when they dragged him in. The walls buzzed with the soft hum of vending machines and tired fluorescent lighting. A lone radio played low behind the front desk, a country song about whiskey and regret, muffled beneath rubber soles and clipped orders. Miles didn't say a word. He walked where they led him, sat when they told him to sit. He was calm, but not submissive. The silence wasn't fear. It was strategy, and that's what Officer Brady didn't understand. Welcome to our humble abode, he said, smirking as he uncuffed Miles in holding room 2. You'll be here a while. Am I being charged? Let's just say we're working on it. The cell door clanged shut behind him. The echo sat there in the air longer than it needed to. Miles sat on the metal bench, back straight, coat still buttoned. His wedding ring caught the light from the single-ceiling bulb, soft, defiant. He thought of Angela. She'd be waiting by the front window by now, a book unopened in her lap. He never missed curfew. Not since the kids left for college. He exhaled slowly. This wasn't new. But it was personal. Because this time, it wasn't just a violation. It was his department. In the hallway, the officers leaned against the wall beside the intake desk, still laughing. Nothing in his car, said Officer Daniels. Not even a spare candy wrapper. Doesn't matter, said Officer Brady. Guys like that always hide something. We'll find it. Daniels chuckled again. Bet he files a complaint. Watch. Says we only pulled him over 'cause he's black. Well, Brady replied with a shrug, but wouldn't be the first to play the card. Behind them, Officer Tanya Morgan entered the hallway. Lieutenant Stripes, posture like stone, eyes like radar. She wasn't part of the Banner Club. She wasn't here to play. She stopped cold when she saw the man in holding room 2. Her eyes narrowed, first with curiosity, then disbelief. Why is he in a cell? Brady straightened slightly, like a schoolboy who realized he'd forgotten his homework. Picked him up for reckless driving. Swerving. Then got mouthy. Possible resistance. Morgan held his gaze. You reviewed his dash cam. Didn't get to that yet. Body cam footage. Daniels scratched his neck. Still uploading. And you didn't charge him. Not yet. But she didn't move. Just stared. The pause grew uncomfortable. Then, get the footage. Now. She turned to Daniels. You, in my office. It took less than 20 minutes to unravel everything. Morgan watched the footage twice. Once with the volume low. Once with her arms crossed. No aggression from Miles. No swerving. No violation. Only professionalism and patience. On the other hand, the officer's tone, body language, the jokes, the smirks, the refusal to answer basic questions, the handcuffs. When she walked back into the hallway, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. She opened the cell door herself. Mr. Terrell. We've reviewed the footage. You're free to go. Miles didn't move right away. Is that all? She swallowed hard. No. I'd like to speak with you privately if you're willing. Her office was plain. No trophies. No flags. Just a desk, 2 chairs, and a small ficus plant that hadn't been watered in weeks. She closed the door behind him. He sat, calmly. Again she leaned forward. I need to ask you something. Go. Head. Who are you? He smiled faintly, not smugly. Just enough to shift the room. Why do you ask? Because men who spend a night in a cell without raising their voice, without calling a lawyer, they're either saints or professionals. Which do you think I am? Neither. I think you're someone important. He nodded slowly. My name is Miles Terrell. 3 weeks ago, I was sworn in as chief of police for Fairview Heights. Silence. It landed like thunder. Morgan sat back. Her breath caught in her throat. He let the silence hang a moment longer. Then, I didn't say anything earlier because I wanted to see how this would play out. Without interference, without politics, just truth. And now you've stood up. Morgan stood up, then sat again. She was embarrassed. But more than that, ashamed. Sir, you don't have to explain, he said gently. I've been where you are. I know the feeling. It's not just about 2 bad officers, she said. It's about a system that protects them. And that's why I'm here, he said. To change that. The next hours passed in a blur, but the damage had already been done. The arrest report was already in the system. And so was the footage. The public would know soon. The department would have questions. The courtroom would have answers. And those 2 officers, they would face more than a reprimand. They would face the truth. On record. On camera. And under oath. It started with a murmur. By sunrise, it had become a storm. News outlets circled like hawks. Social media whispered before it screamed. By noon, a small courthouse in Fairview Heights had become the epicenter of something much larger than one arrest. The doors of room 3C opened at 1:42 p.m. It was standing room only. The crowd wasn't loud. They didn't need to be. The silence was heavier than shouting. Reporters filled the back row. City officials leaned in stiffly near the front. The gallery was a patchwork of veterans, teachers, barbers, parents, and students. All with one thing in common: they were watching. And they would remember everything. Miles sat at the defendant's table, uncuffed, unshaken, but deeply aware. Not just of the cameras outside, not just of the reporters on their phones, but of the fact that, for many in this town, today was the first time they were seeing what justice actually looked like. When it stared back, beside him sat attorney Sandra Beckett, an oak tree in human form. Steady, sharp, unmovable. Across from them, officers Daniels and Brady looked smaller. Their city, appointed attorney fiddled with his pen, knuckles tight with discomfort. Judge Morrow entered with his signature shuffle. Veteran of the bench, no patience for theater, no tolerance for deceit. This hearing will come to order. The prosecution began. A thin narrative, hastily recited. On the night in question, the defendant was seen swerving into a neighboring lane, was pulled over, became non-compliant, suspected of resisting. The courtroom blinked. Miles didn't. He simply looked down at his wedding band, resting on the table. A reminder of why he stayed calm, a reminder of who was waiting. Then came Sandra. She didn't rise. She unfolded, like something ancient had just stirred. Your Honor, the charges against my client are not only baseless but dangerous. This wasn't a traffic stop. It was an abuse of power. And today, we will show that in every detail. The judge nodded once. Proceed. She tapped a small remote. The lights dimmed. And then footage. First dash cam. The courtroom watch frame by frame. Miles driving smoothly. Lane centered. No swerving. Speed 29 mph. Speed limit 35. No rolling stop. No tail light out. Nothing. Then, sirens without cause. Next body cam. The room leaned in. Officer Daniels. You in a hurry tonight. Officer Brady. Another one of them. The audience gasped. The judge squinted. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a beat. Then the arrest. Miles narrating his every move. Calm, composed, respectful. Officers escalating without reason. Jokes, grabs, cuffs. Sandra paused the footage, then faced the courtroom. This is not policing. This is prejudice. And my client was placed in a cell not because he broke the law, but because he fit their narrative, a narrative they never questioned. The prosecutor stammered, tried to pivot. Perhaps the officers believed. Belief is not law. Sandra interrupted. She turned to Miles. Mr. Terrell, do you have anything to say? He rose slowly. His chair didn't scrape. His voice didn't shake. But the room held its breath. My name is Miles Terrell. 3 weeks ago, I was appointed as chief of police for Fairview Heights. A shock, not outrage, not applause. Just stunned, echoing realization. Daniels turned white. Brady's chair shifted beneath him. The judge lifted his chin. I didn't reveal my title because I wanted this to be judged on the facts. Not politics, not perception, but truth. And now you've seen it. His words landed like bricks in water, soft, but irreversible. This isn't about me. It's about a system that allowed 2 officers to lie and laugh while placing an innocent man in chains. It's about a culture that protects power over people. He didn't need to shout, because the silence afterward did it for him. The judge exhaled, then looked at the prosecution. Do you wish to continue? The young lawyer shook his head. No, Your Honor. The charges, dismissed, officially, but the real verdict was outside, waiting. When Miles stepped onto the courthouse steps, microphones swarmed like bees. Chief Terrell, do you feel vindicated? What reforms are coming? What happens to the officers? He raised a hand. Silence fell. This case wasn't about revenge. It's about accountability. And if we truly want change, it starts with truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially then. Back at the precinct, the fallout was immediate. Daniels and Brady, suspended. An internal review was launched. And Miles, he didn't gloat, he called a department-wide meeting. Not to lecture, but to lead. He stood in front of them, uniform on, voice steady. What happened to me has happened to too many others. If you wear this badge to intimidate, leave. If you wear it to protect, stay. But don't confuse the two ever again. No one moved. No one spoke. Because something was happening that couldn't be undone. The air in the room had changed. And every officer felt it. The town hall wasn't built for moments like this. The folding chairs creaked beneath the weight of anticipation. The walls were lined with more people than fire code allowed. The air felt still, even though outside, spring winds brushed through the cherry blossoms on Main Street. They had come for closure, for answers. But what they found was something else entirely. Miles Terrell sat near the edge of the stage. No uniform, no podium, no notes. Just a microphone clipped to his shirt and a glass of water left untouched beside him. He hadn't prepared a speech. He didn't need one. The people already knew what had happened. The footage had aired. The headlines had circled. But this night wasn't about reviewing the facts. It was about revealing the feeling. The moderator cleared her throat. We'll open the floor now. If you have a question or a comment, please step forward. At first, no one moved.
Tenable, maybe 16.
Hoodie. Hands trembling. He didn't make eye contact. Not at first. My name's Kyle. I live on Beach Street, near where it happened. His voice cracked. But he kept going. That night, I saw it. From my window. I saw them pull you out. And I just want to say thank you. Because it could have been me. The room held its breath. Kyle swallowed. And you didn't just let it go. You stayed. You fought. You made it mean something. Miles didn't reply immediately. He let the words hang, let them settle. Then he stood. Thank you. Kyle. That's exactly why I didn't stay silent. Because no one should have to watch from behind glass and wonder if they're next. Later that night, after the town hall had ended and the chairs were stacked, Miles walked the empty hallway of City Hall alone. The janitor nodded. The building was quiet again, but something had shifted, not just in policy, not just in protocol, but in people. Over the next few months, sweeping reforms followed. Mandatory de-escalation training, anonymous misconduct reporting, a civilian oversight board, community ride, alongs not performative changes. Real ones, painful ones. The kind that didn't just patch wounds, but expose them first. One afternoon, Miles visited Angela's classroom. She taught sixth-grade social studies at the public charter on the 14th Street. On the board behind her, a quote was written in purple marker. True leadership isn't about power. It's about responsibility. Beneath it, a student had drawn a cartoon of a police officer helping a little girl cross the street. Miles didn't say anything. He just stood there and smiled. That night, Angela found him on the porch. He was staring into the streetlight haze, a mug of tea in hand. "What are you thinking?" she asked. He paused. "That I almost didn't say anything. That I almost let it go." She stepped beside him. "But you didn't." He nodded. "No, I didn't. Because staying quiet would have been easier." Ooh, but Kyle would have still been watching from his window. And I wouldn't be able to live with that. The porch creaked beneath them. Somewhere down the street a dog barked. Life carried on. But it was different now. Because the story had changed, and this time, it was told the right way. The end. Sometimes the people who change the world don't march. They wait. They endure. They speak softly, but carry the kind of truth that echoes. Miles Terrell didn't raise his voice. He didn't seek revenge. He stood still and let the facts speak. And because of that, an entire department changed. A town started to listen. And a boy watching from his window finally believed that justice could have a face that looked like his. So here's the truth. Change doesn't always start with a bang. Sometimes it starts with silence, followed by courage. And now the rest is up to us. If you ever find yourself in a moment that doesn't feel right, say something. If you see someone being silenced, stand beside them. Because justice isn't just a word, it's a choice. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Tell us what you felt, who you thought of, what this reminded you of. And if you believe stories like this matter, hit subscribe. Join us for the next one. Because there's always another story that needs to be told, and someone waiting to hear it.